Okay, so let's get started, Ola. Welcome to the next episode of my podcast, Instructional Design PL. I've been so excited to this because we have so much in common. We work in the same company. We both assigned and enrolled to the Idol Academy. We are, interested into upskilling, instructional design. And the best part is that we did not even know that we worked in the same company before. So we should probably know each other from Volvo, and we have the same friends, but we didn't know it until we met in the company that we work right now in.
Such a small world, isn't it?
Indeed.
Especially in the ID world. It's
Yeah.
it's really not that big.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Great. So, Ola, why don't you tell us a little something about your professional journey into becoming instructional designer?
Sure. So, well, it's interesting because, like probably many instructional designers, my journey has been, quite accidental to say the least. It's definitely not something that I've been anticipating or planning for when I was growing up. Definitely not. Not even during my college years. I did not have the idea about this sphere, this area, this profession in particular. Um, so how I started in this area, basically straight out of college, my first job, I ended up helping with quite a big transformation, HR transformation project at Volvo. Um, and my initial job on that project was some basic HR administration. Later on, it started evolving slightly towards supporting other teams, um, global teams of HR administrators situated around the world. So I had to change my mode of working slightly from administrating and solving the problems myself to supporting them and helping them administrate, helping them troubleshoot, and basically walking them through the basic procedures in the SAP and walking them through that transformation. Uh, in the first phases of the project, I was on my own. Later on, we onboarded a professional instructional designer and a trainer, and that was another sort of a breaking point for me because she opened up this whole new world for me, and we became really close on that project. So I was really interested and intrigued about her work. It seemed fascinating. It seemed like something that I could potentially do, I could potentially feel. She could feel my interest, and she sort of used that relationship a little bit to um, gain some insider information on the SAP administration, etc. So it was really enjoyable, and really she encouraged me to go down that path. She really saw that I was really intrigued, and it was her who started suggesting that, well, you know, you're young, you should start thinking about what you want to do next, where you want to go. Maybe why don't you look into that? Why don't you look into training and instructional design? And so I did, and I absolutely do not regret it. It was random but sort of organic at the same time.
Oh, yeah, I can totally relate to what you were saying, and especially that I think I know that person. Because the
Exactly. As
person that
we
encouraged
realized some
you to
time ago.
become instructional designer was a person who onboarded me to instructional design team in Volvo Group University, and I know that she always has this capacity to draw and paint pictures in your head. She was really inspiring, and I think she
Yes.
also helped to set up a lot of the things and frameworks for Volvo Group University at the time.
That's
So
true.
you kind of when I stepped into the field, you already moved to Accenture, and I think I saw the offer back in the day, and I was not yet, courageous enough to apply. And I thought, okay, one
Uh,
day I'll apply for
Someday,
that
one
job.
of
And
these
here
days
we
I
are.
will.
Here we
Yes,
are, I think
yes,
5 years later. So yeah, it's a
exactly.
really interesting story, and everything is so connected. And speaking
That's
of
true.
people who encourage us and who kind of make us grow, because a lot of the people who are looking at those job posts of instructional designers out there, they're thinking if they have enough of competencies to do that, and kind of what if I don't, and what will happen if I join the company? Will they teach me how to do it? How is that being done in the company? So if you could speak to the topic of development and upskilling in the corporate world, and how do we make sure that instructional designers keep up with the technology, with the recent trends, and so on? Because I know that you are an ambassador
Sort
for
of
those things at
active,
Accenture.
trying to be active in that area at least. This is such a good question, such a broad question, and so many issues it touches upon. So first of all, yes, it is a huge challenge for everyone looking to become an instructional designer, and for instructional designers nowadays, that really this field, while it's growing constantly and really fast, and that there's no denying that,
Mm-hmm.
still they're not. It's not very still very recognized, very mainstream, and there are not many easily accessible mainstream ways to get a formal education to become an instructional designer. There are
Mm-hmm.
design schools, but
Yeah.
instructional design is something completely different, and nowhere to be found in a design school. So it's a whole different world, so to speak, and you have to be really determined, and you have to really own your growth, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. At the same time, I would also say that if you're looking to become or transition to instructional design, definitely do not get discouraged uh, because you don't have formal training or formal education or formal certificates. Nowadays, um, yes, the education, the academic background, it is a big asset for sure, but at the same time, your attitude and hands-on experience, I believe, are still king in the corporate environment, and uh, um, definitely try go for it. And well, just like many of us, you will have to learn along the way.
So,
So
mm-hmm.
I've noticed, looking at our organization, right, and it's been around for a couple of years already. There are different things that we have been trying, different things that work better. Some things don't work quite as well, but um, from what I'm seeing, it's all about creating that right learning ecosystem. Like with all subject matter, instructional design is no different. So you have to have the right mix of technology, of methods, of content and people, and all of these things have to work together to enable the best sort of learning environment. Um, and I personally believe that the learning environment should be should be moving towards being very personalized,
Mm-hmm.
um, focused on, competency, allow for self-directed learning, but at the same time be a social
Mm-hmm.
experience. So I think there is a growing need for sort of informal counselors,
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of role models, so to speak, um, that you can not only um, get formal training from, but that the people, kinds of people who would guide you through your journey, uh, be there along the way, that you could have informal catch-ups with, um, let them know where you're headed, how you're feeling, what are your main challenges, confront some of these thoughts that are going to haunt you. And it is true, especially I think about the job of instructional designer, that it is quite easy to have to start feeling an imposter syndrome. At least this
Mm-hmm.
is what I found
Yeah.
for myself.
Yes.
Um, it is quite easy to get into that mode that, oh, I don't have that, I don't have that, I don't know this model or that model. Um, Maybe I don't have the right competencies to be doing that, but you have to be resilient. Um, there are many resources that you can reach out to, wonderful books,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's definitely worth getting this kind of counselor, or maybe a group of counselors, or a group of passionate peers with whom you can have this safe space and sort of discuss your growth and bounce different ideas, and so on.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially that a lot of the times we hear that there are no unicorns, right? So there are no people who will actually be able to do all of those stuff because like you said, you've
Exactly.
became like kind of accidental instructional designer a little bit. So probably that meant that you had a lot of subject matter expertise in the topic. You've been already creating trainings for your peers in the organization, and it was a natural step for you because you've been also interested to move out of the subject matter expertise and then start to build other trainings as well. And then comes in the imposter syndrome, right? Because you had some experience, you did some stuff, right? But there are so many other, competencies that are on the agenda of instructional designer that it can really hard. And then the other way around, if a person starts small, like maybe for example being content developer, they focus force on authoring tools maybe, and they when they
Exactly.
want to step in and maybe do something more high profile, maybe they want to do analysis and maybe they want to drive those conversation with subject matter experts, probably they will feel a little bit insecure, and that would be a path for development for them.
Oh yes, exactly. Like you said, there are so many new sort of frontiers that I think they're being
Mm-hmm.
sort of added to the scope, to the umbrella of what an instructional designer
Yes.
should be able to navigate almost every year, and not to
Yes.
mention the technology itself. The technology itself is very tricky and developing very fast, very fascinating, of course,
Mm.
but it's hard to keep abreast of that for sure.
So I guess the formula would be to have a big team, and to have that team consisting of many people who have different specialization, or who have different
Sort of focus
focus
areas.
areas of focus.
Hmm.
Yes.
I think so. I think so. Um, I've seen that this is sort of the direction that we are heading right now with our team for sure. I think we finally accepted, made the realization and accepted the fact that you can't do it all, and it doesn't even make sense to try to to do it all and to have in-depth expertise in all of these areas. So we're making, or at least now, we are transitioning to the model where we have smaller sort of subgroups or communities of practice. Some are focused more on
Mm.
technology, some are focused more on creativity, um, new working methods, storytelling,
Yes.
um, design thinking. Some are purely focused on solutioning and estimating large scale solutions. It's a lot, really, and it's really hard to be an expert in all of these areas. It's really more, I think, productive and satisfying to think about what really interests you and try to stick into that, and not to be sort of a jack of all trades and master
Mm-hmm.
of none, but really think about where is your place in all of that.
Yeah. And, but anyways, you cannot really, make those people make those things available for the learners without having the right technology in place, without having the right authoring tools in place. Of course, not everybody on the team has to specialize in that and actually do that. Some people can just do the design. Why not? But being aware of the landscape and those rising technologies, I think, is also part of what instructional designer need to do. They always need to be on the lookout. They need to be curious and
Yes.
expand those, those tools box for
Mm-hmm.
your learning solutions. So could you speak
Absolutely.
to those rising technologies and maybe explain a little bit what are those and what is on the agenda nowadays? What is the hot topic?
Sure. Yeah. There are definitely some visible trends, some trends that are more visible than others right now. Yeah, so, well, I think there are a couple of trends. There are many rising technologies at the moment and more coming every year, but I think that some of the trends are more visible than the others. One for sure would be the VR, XR, AR type of training. And this, well, I don't think it has really hit the mainstream just yet, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's on the brink of getting there. Um, in the past few years, we've seen full-fledged VR solutions, training solutions being rolled out at many Fortune 500 companies, especially in the automotive industry, for example. Um, at our company, I know that we are actively looking into that and discussing um, playing with technology, playing with the software, um, discussing how to solution projects. I know that as of this year, we are even delivering a first VR project. So that's really exciting, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it's only going to become more mainstream. The main problems with that technology so far have been, first of all, the cost,
Mm-hmm.
and second of all, the technology itself. So it wasn't um, easy enough. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't uh, mm, easy to use, or the technology itself was kind of heavy, clunky, um, complicated, not really easy to use if you don't have this in-depth knowledge, steep learning curve. And every year it is becoming mm, more and more sort of mm, user-friendly. So
Mm-hmm.
I think this is really something that's coming. We haven't seen the last from VRXR. It has great potential for very personalized, immersive type of content, and definitely one trend that is, in my opinion, here to stay for certain particular types of training that require placing a learner in an environment that really mirrors the real physical environment where
Mm-hmm.
the job is being performed. That is just the perfect solution to this
Mm-hmm.
type of learning experience, really.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, another big word in the industry right now is artificial intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
and this can mean so many things on so many different levels, but um, it can mean automating, tasks that learners or educators are even performing right now. It could mean identifying patterns in learner behaviors or identifying problem areas that um, learners might have and proactively suggesting certain resources, certain solutions. Um, it could mean um, problem solving for the learners. It could mean so many different things and be used in so many different contexts, like, for example, recommendation algorithms in case of learning experience platforms. Um, it is also being explored for yet another uh, big rising um, area in the industry, that is digital adoption.
Mm-hmm.
So you know that it's one of my fields of interest, digital adoption platforms. And digital adoption platforms in and of themselves are also looking into applying some artificial intelligence algorithms in order to better assist the learners. So, well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I should go a step back and explain a little bit about the digital adoption platforms
Mm-hmm.
themselves. So, um, digital adoption platforms are really the type of tools that um, assist the learner in the moment of need. So inside of an application, if we're to take it to a very down to earth sort of example, explain it very plainly. When I'm a user of a certain application, let's say a web application, um, I go to that application and I don't have to really know much about it. Once I enter it, I'm going to be assisted by a digital adoption tool that's going to,
Mm-hmm.
just like a person who's sitting really next to you, um, pointing things on the screen and showing you where to click and what to do and giving you some tips or best practices. This tool is going to sort of provide the same experience. So it guides you through the processes. It provides you the resources that you might need at certain point. Um, it directs you to the support. So really, when you think about it, it's a very attractive proposition because it almost eliminates that need for a formal training prior to using a certain application. Um, Normally, what would happen is that, okay, in this traditional sort of training solution, you would have either some instructor-led sessions, demo sessions, or maybe you would have an
Mm-hmm.
e-learning that you would have to go through, or maybe even some interactive simulations that mirror the system, but are not the system, right? And you would be asked to go through certain scenarios that mirror what you would normally do in your job. So that would prepare you for the actual thing. And with digital adoption platforms, we eliminate all that. We go directly to our work environment and we just simply start working. It's an aid um, that makes sure that you complete your tasks and you do it with no problems. You don't turn in the middle of the process. You finalize
Mm-hmm.
and you don't make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is really cool because it's also going in the direction of personalization. So um, there are different segments that you can apply to this. So
Mm-hmm.
these kind of platforms, they recognize different user groups. They can recognize your role based on variables. They can recognize the geography and the language that you're speaking and adjust the language. Um, and to go back to artificial intelligence, um, those companies are looking into applying some um, artificial intelligence algorithm to make that experience even more sort of intelligent, even more personalized. So uh, the idea would be that artificial intelligence would, based on your actions, on the actions of the user on the interface, um, predict certain behaviors
Mm-hmm.
or analyze what you're doing and perhaps recognize that you're having some trouble. You're spending way more time on this site than you should be. Maybe I should suggest you this solution.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very interesting. I think it is also one of the future trends that we are about that is going to become a reality very soon. And we are each and every one of us will have this sort of custom, personalized assistant built in the application that we're working on and making sure that we're not lost. And if we are lost, providing us the solutions and
Mm-hmm.
pointing to the places where we should go and get help.
Mm. I
So
yeah,
this is very
thank you. I have
interesting.
a couple of reflections about that. Um, so I totally agree that it's so exciting and that technology is coming. But I think it's oftentimes the technology goes quicker than the mindset of the clients, right? So
That's true.
let's say that we already have the technology in place, but the client still wants to have this formal trainings because they don't have enough trust. They then didn't go the
Yes.
learning curve to kind of let the technology and let the people, you know, owning their learning of the software. So I think that's one of the very important aspects, that we not only need to be knowledgeable and conversational about those topics, but we also
I
need to
agree.
assist the client in changing the mindset, so they can fully feel okay and trusting the technology will do its job. And and
Oh yes, it raises it. Yeah, it raises what you said is absolutely true, and it brings actual memories of actual situations where I've seen, and I think we all see, uh, this kind of lack of comfort with just replacing formal training with digital adoption solutions. Um, Nowadays, what we deliver is usually still a blend of formal training supplemented by digital adoption solutions that assist users um, from the stage of the hypercare and stay with them. Um, but not many clients really go into the direction of completely getting rid of the formal training and or minimizing the formal training effort and replacing it with digital adoption. That is something that I think is still ahead of us. And you could make the case that likely you never should maybe 100% get rid of uh, any formal training. I think it's important to have conversations with the client and educate them on what type of formats work best for what kind of task and what type of learning content. So a really neat way to think about it is that um, a very whole, well-rounded learning experience consists of these three types of buckets. So you have to teach the why, the what, and the how. And
Mm-hmm.
the digital adoption platforms, so tools such as WalkMe, WhatFix, AppLearn, and the likes, they are perfect to um, take care of the how.
Mm-hmm.
So these are our algorithms. So the step-by-step guidance on what to do, where to go, where to click. But it will not be as effective at communicating the why of the change, which is just as important in many cases. It's not going to also be as effective at communicating the what. It can have elements of that, but it is not uh, the right vehicle for that. So the best sort of experience would always be a blend, the right kind of ecosystem um, that
Mm-hmm.
sort of takes care of all of these three aspects.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
yeah,
And so, as much as the role of instructional designer is here to assist with the mind change and also keep on explaining the adult learning principles to the client, and it's never underestimate the power of learning on the job, of practice, and explain um, what is the science behind this, that how really people learn. And I think it's the confusion stems from the fact how school's been set up, and kind of your academia and university learning, where it's all about memorizing and learning for the test and not learning to actually gain the skills. And
that's
that's
right.
why we take those assumptions and those habits from the school, from the universities to work. And here it's not how it's supposed to be. Here it's supposed to be quick, and it's supposed to be about the skill and how well you can apply
Competency
those.
based,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I think
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
about that. So we need to stress that every time to the client. And also another thing that I'm curious is, for those rising technologies, since we don't know so much about them, and not a lot of the people have been involved into design and production. So my question is, so how do we design for those solutions? What are the considerations? Like, will there be any programmer needed, any programming skills? Will I need to program it, or will I cooperate with maybe some IT teams to enable that? So those are the questions of every designers, because typically we know the authoring software, we can easily produce a storyboard, but for VR, I don't know what I need to provide and to whom in order for this to be produced. And then from the learner perspective, like, is it enough just to have a mobile phone and a typical laptop computer and a screen? What are the devices that we need to purchase or provide to those people so they can engage with those learning solutions
Yes.
developed in those technologies? So I'm so curious about those nitty gritty details, of course.
Yes, yes, it can be intimidating. It certainly is, especially in my personal opinion and experience, the around the VR and AR and XR. These things are logistically and operationally more complex because you work with a completely different type of technology and the design is completely different and the skill sets that you need
Mm-hmm.
are something else than you've seen or applied ever before. It's always good to have a mix of people with different um, skills and um, for what I've seen in our team and what I believe is sort of the best approach at cracking this, if you will, is to start with some kind of a informal community of practice um,
Mm-hmm.
and incubation and start small, start playing with, some easy code-free um, software applications that are available that are not that very expensive, but already allow for creating some basic but effective AR, VR experiences. I know that in our team we are sort of exploring and incubating one popular piece of software called Scenario VR.
Mm.
I know that Adobe Creative Cloud or suite also contains um, Aero, I believe. That's another application that is no code. So in theory, you should be able to just pick this software up, um, go through a couple of videos on YouTube and rapidly, prototype something easy and but that would still be effective. So I believe with this kind of overwhelming technologies, really, you have to start small. You have to start from small actionable items and low hanging fruit and build on that experience, start involving more people, start
Mm-hmm.
prototyping and then, learn as you go. But um, then of course invest more money in the process, but don't start super big and sort of grow your expectations as you progress.
Yeah, so Ola, definitely count me in your next initiative for the advanced rising technologies. And this is all very exciting and complicating, but going to something more simple and something that maybe relates more of the soft skills and people skills, stuff like that. Um, I would like you to tell us a little something. What is your take on daily challenges of instructional designers? If it's not just technology, what is it that make us sweat every
Oh
day?
goodness, so many things. I think that, well, first of all, I would say um, we are living in a very interesting time of digital transformation. Everything's moving to online. It's just been obviously accelerated by the pandemics. The training is moving online. The learners, however, are quite demanding, and there are many, many things competing for their attention.
Mm-hmm.
So, as an instructional designer, you need to find clever ways to deliver a content that's, very often not that fascinating, and you have to find ways to sort of keep their attention, make the learner come back. Not only that, um, make the learner, grow their competency and use their competency in their work environment. So you need to be like you said before, constantly learning, constantly evaluating, and you need to take an active interest in how adult people learn, how our brains
Yes.
work basically, and how to design for that to accommodate our brains that get bored easily and get distracted easily. Um, so this is one of the, I would say, biggest challenges for sure. Um, Another thing that's quite big right now is the topic of data and um, analytics. So not only are we supposed to deliver those interesting and, attention grabbing and effective learning experiences. So, well, another challenge that I thought about was that not only do we have to design those interested, interesting, um, blended, um, self-directed learning experiences, but we also have to plan ahead for how we want to evidence the learning outcomes. So the topic of data and topic of analytics are here to stay, um, and we as instructional designers, we need to be at least start getting aware of it and start feeling comfortable with this type of data-driven um, analytics, data-driven evaluation of learning and performance outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm, well, technology is something that we've already discussed that is moving in extremely fast pace. Again, it's impossible to be the master of all of those technologies, but at least it's good to know what's on the horizon, to
Mm-hmm.
know what the landscape looks like, be able to have conversations about it, but don't stress too much about, being um, a hands-on expert. Um, that I think is of a secondary importance, and uh, it's far more beneficial to educate yourself in how adult people learn and take care of the tools or worry about the tools slightly. So I think I would just say that it's technology is important, but as instructional designer, you shouldn't stress too much about your hands-on experience and the level of mastery that you have in a particular tool. Rather, um, I think it's more important to explore and constantly educate yourself on um, methods for how adults learn, for how our brains work, for how we can shorten that time to competency. And when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to the formats and when it comes to the technology and delivery, that will always come into place. Um, and you can always upskill yourself in that area. You can always find the people who will help you, gain the skills that you need rapidly. Um, but it's only the format, right? And there are many different tools. Some are more important, more complicated, less complicated. Really, it's not as important. It's the method and the idea behind it and the vision behind it, um, and the reasoning behind it that's consistent with the way we learn. That's, I believe, more should be of more interest and more concern for instructional designers.
Yes, I totally agree. So, use your development, own it, use your network, don't be shy, and, you know, you will succeed. Then,
Exactly.
I'm mindful of the time here, and I think I will ask, the final question. So, if you could give like an ultimate advice to people who are now thinking, should I apply or not? So, what would that be? Like a piece of, advice from an experience.
Sure. Well, my opinion is absolutely go for it. If you have a hunch, a feeling that instructional design might be for you, it's absolutely worth exploring it. Studies show that instructional designers, it is honestly a very good choice of a career. Instructional designers on average um, um, make make more money than average salaries. They report more satisfaction on the job than average. Um, and it's a very interesting area. So absolutely go for it and don't get discouraged if you don't have formal training. There are more and more opportunities to rapidly upskill yourself in that area. You and I are taking part in such an educational sort of opportunity at the moment. It's absolutely great. And it's focused on competency. So one more time, theory is not as important as you might think. It's all about your attitude, your willingness, and your hands-on experience. Absolutely read books. Uh, that's going to help you no matter which subject matter you are trying to upskill yourself in. There are many wonderful books written by many accidental instructional designers in the industry. Start learning about how adult people learn, and well, maybe learn a few basic instructional ID models so you feel better, you can be conversational about them, and that will definitely help sort of fight that imposter syndrome. But my ultimate advice is absolutely go for it and do not get discouraged.
So thank you, Ola, so much for being my guest today. I think, well, I'm sure it was a treat for me, and I'm sure it will be and is a treat for the listeners of this podcast. And maybe, just to, so people stay curious. I think I can say that we are working on one project, and once we are finished, we can present a case study in the podcast if you will be open to that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I think this is a very fun, enjoyable experience for us. So maybe just to give a little sneak peek,
Yeah.
we are sort of designing a learning program, but we're doing it, we are very particular about each and every stage because we are not under a time pressure. So we're doing it sort of by the book, the way it should be done. We are learning um, along the way, making notes of what works and what doesn't work at each stage. And if you would be interested in seeing that, then we can, of course, report on our findings and share the final result.
Okay, so having that said, I encourage everybody to listen to the next podcast. And thank you, Ola, and have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you, Camila. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.